Right then, so guys, welcome to, you would have seen the title, we've got another interview, amazingly. The auditor, the writer, director of Hellraiser Judgment. He is amazingly on Skype with me, willing to do an interview. So this is Gary J Tunnicliffe. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you for allowing me to come onto the site and bore more people to death about Hellraiser Judgment.
I think, well, in fairness, I've probably bored everyone to death more than you will during this. That's for sure.
Oh no, trust me. I'm Olympic standard boring when it comes to
Oh dear. So look, we spoke about this just now. I am going to ask you just to kind of give a quick rundown of your history, because a lot of people won't know this at all. They just won't. But you've worked on Hellraiser movies and been a part of the film productive side of it for a really, really long time. And I think it's important to say this from the start, because a lot of people will judge, well, or have judged Judgment as is, without knowing this as a backstory in terms of kind of you're part of the the films.
But they should. People shouldn't need to know my background and my my adoration for the series to watch the film. I mean, I think it's good that they don't. I mean, I think if people I think prior to the trailer coming out, people going, oh, well, Gary gives a damn and Gary cares about it is very nice. But I think for your general punter who's picking up a movie out of Redbox or a video, library or whatever, should just watch the film and be able to slag me off or praise me, not knowing anything about me. So, I mean, my background and my affinity for Hellraiser really, because in some ways it's a good thing, in some ways a bad thing, because people like the film, they'll go, well, see, he's a fan, he loves it. God bless him and his little, love Clive Barker and all things Hellraisery. And if I do a bad job and they don't like it, they're going to go, that terrible bastard. He's a fan. He should know better. What has he done? He promised us it was going to be good. So curse and damnation on him forever, and all of his brethren, and may his penis wither and fall off. I don't know.
Oh, good lord! I mean, that's quite the turn down for introducing yourself.
Oh, you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, a little bit,
it was a warm summer's eve in 1967 when my parents first met.
Oh, dear. Well, look, basically, guys that don't know this, I mean, you are right. 100% you are right. People should judge Judgment on the movie, on its own merits and how it is as a standalone. But I do think people will be interested to kind of know your background on working on the movies. Basically, you've worked on them for a really, really long time. You've been part of the film industry for a really, really long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Staffordshire, in England, in the north of England, or Midlands, as you know. And then, as a young man at school, I wanted to be an actor. And coming from rural England, ideas of wanting to be an actor are not really embraced. So I did the next best thing, which was I was singing in rock bands and stuff like that, and kind of generally being annoying. My parents divorced when I was 12, and it made me go completely crazy, as most 12-year-olds with divorced parents probably do. And I started getting into bad habits and stuff. Anyway, and decided that school wasn't really for me, that I should be the next David Lee Roth, which seemed like a great career choice. And then a drummer, and I loved horror films. I'd always loved horror films. I mean, growing up in England, as everyone knows, that one of 3 channels, there was always a horror film on a Friday night, and that was kind of my treat, was to watch a horror film. So grew up loving Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and the Hammer horror films, and probably had my first sexual experiences and titillation watching things like Twins of Evil and Vampire Lovers and things like that, and going, being left downstairs at 12 o'clock at night to watch a horror film and going, good lord, breasts. And then grew up loving horror films. And then a drummer in a band gave me a magazine called Fangoria, and I saw horror stuff, obviously, and loved it. But I also saw these guys sculpting and creating makeup effects, and I thought, wow, that's kind of a cool thing. And I really got into it and thought, well, maybe I could do that. And then one day I'd be on set and they'd kind of give me a role in a movie or something like that. But it really became a career thing to do, and I got obsessed with makeup effects. So I was reading about Rick Baker and Rob Bottin and Dick Smith and and people like that, and then I got into the works of writers. I started, I read Stephen King, and I was reading Lovecraft, and then stumbled upon this British author called Clive Barker and started reading the books of blood and fell in love with the books of blood, the Son of Celluloid, and In the Hills of Cities, and Dan Satan and stuff like that. Just gobbled it up, and then when I heard there was a film coming out of Hellraiser, The Hellbound Heart, I raced to the cinema, and 87, I sat at the classic Canon cinema in Cannock. Bathed in the light from the screen, and just kind of like had an epiphany where, this character appeared and said, who did this, we want the man who did this. And I was like, good God, who is that? That's amazing. That's incredible. That's what I want to do. And watching the film, I realized, although it's supposed to be America, it never felt America to me. It always felt like England,
Yeah.
And seeing people like Claire Higgins and that going, she's English, and then got to the end, saw Bob Keane's name and was like, when I discovered he was English, it became my kind of journey to try and get to Bob, and then work on the Hellraiser films, which did. That happened, and when I joined Bob's company, they'd already done Hellbound. So my first foray into Hellraiser was in 1992 when we did Hell on Earth, which I started off as the box maker on that, and then became the effects supervisor, makeup effects shop supervisor, I should say, and then we opened a shop in Los Angeles, which I headed, and one of the first films we did was Hellraiser Bloodline, and Bob Keane at that point basically said, look, you love this stuff, clearly you're freakishly into Hellraiser and all things Clive, so why don't you run with it? And that was it. From then I was the designer of the Hellraiser and Pinhead and the Cenobites Angelique and stuff like that, and then it became sticking with it through thick and thin, ups and downs, good and bad. And yes, there's been a lot of bad films made, but every time we made one, we were hoping it was going to be something that would turn things around for the fans and for everybody, me included, really. My agenda for working on Hellraiser films was hopefully to have one that would be amazing. And there were talk of bigger budgets on films, and there was talk about Clive returning, there was talk about all sorts of stuff that got us excited over the years. But then it kind of like went downhill through the stages of Hellworld, down through Revelations, and eventually, to me, finally getting a stab at it on Judgment.
Well, no, I mean, you had your stab at it before, though, as well, because of the No More Souls, right?
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people probably don't know about this, but you made your own miniature movie, which I personally really liked, actually, and also your performance was really quite good as the man himself.
No, thank you very much. That was after Hellworld. I was just completely demoralised with what I'd just seen happen, and came back and was like, I was bitching and complaining, and I think some of my crew were like, why don't you just do something about it, And I basically, so I wrote a little script and we shot it and filmed it. It was really just, this was a long time ago, but it was really before the kind of plethora of fan films that were out. I think the only fan film I'd seen to that point was Troops, the Star Wars fan film, but we made it, and then I didn't really have any plans to do anything with it. Looking back, I should have probably submitted it to short film festivals, but I really was never into that kind of thing. I just made it because I wanted to do something, and then luckily people saw it who were friends of mine who worked in the industry, and they all kind of wanted to lend a hand. So Patrick Lussier, the great editor and director, lent a hand, and Henning Lohner and Jonathan Miller, brilliant sound designer, lent a hand. So everybody kind of piled their efforts into it, and we had this fun little short film that then, Nick Phillips at Dimension said, let's put it on the DVD, and Paul Kane wrote about it in his Hellraiser Legacy book, and most people who do see it tend to have a really strong reaction to it,
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening to this that doesn't actually know what it is, it's kind of set in the future. Well, in kind of my interpretation, in the future, there is, as the name implies, there's no souls left for the Cenobites to kind of harvest, and they're kind of aging or cannibalizing onto one another, but also they can't experience the enjoyment factor that they kind of get from performing their duties, so to speak. Was that kind of a good summary, I guess? Yeah,
it's a post-apocalypse movie. It's in a short. It's basically predicated on the idea of, when I wrote it was, what if there was a war and everybody died? What would the Cenobites do? What would hell be like? So, Pinhead's got no one else to do his deeds on. So after the kind of glut of everybody going through the process in hell or heaven, then it's all kind of just sitting still, and the machine is starting to feed on itself. So Pinhead does this little soliloquy, that he laments, and it's really kind of Shakespearean, I think, where he kind of, he kind of says, after the Great War, and no one saw the war coming, and then what is there left to do? And he realizes at the very end that, before his Chatterer and his brethren turn upon him, he might as well indulge himself in one last slice of sensation. So he opens the box, and that was kind of like, well, what would happen if you opened the box in hell? So it's only 6 minutes long, and it's just a little bit of fun, but I do think the end shot of Pinhead's face being nailed to a torture pillar was fun. And so that was my first foray into actually writing and directing, and also it was kind of out there to show people, something that hopefully had the tone and feel of a Hellraiser movie.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, I think that did. Especially by comparison to the other stuff that had been around at that time. I really like it. I encourage anyone to go and check it out. You can find it on YouTube. It's not the best quality, but it is on there. I'm not sure whether you want me to encourage people to find it on YouTube, but it is about.
I'm very proud of it. So yeah, absolutely. And there's a making of too. There's a making of.
I haven't seen that. I need to.
Yeah, there's a making of with me yakkering on about how. Also, some behind the scenes of me getting in makeup, which is quite amusing because it's usually the way when I have makeups put on me. I don't know what happens, but there's a strange things happen to me when I get makeups put on me. Usually in the process of having them applied. When I was having the makeup applied as Pinhead, I turned into this other character, kind of a very aloof Shakespearean actor. And when I would play the auditor, I would turn into a crazy Irishman. Really. And Mike Regan has footage of me just being very bizarre, kind of like having the auditor makeup put on me and being this wild kind of drunken Irish character. It's very strange.
Well, that's kind of a big contrast to the kind of German accent you had actually in the film then.
Yeah, I'm glad that people are actually picking up on that now. It's to talk about the auditor for just a second. I know we're kind of leaping ahead, but he is German, but I can't stand German English actors or American actors who play German actors with this and that, and everything is very like this, It's
really accentuated, really.
Yeah, right? Because I've got lots of German friends, and they don't talk like that at all. They tend to talk like this, and it's just a slight hint where the language is a bit stilted and odd, but really not very big or changing, and that is where the auditor comes in. He's a little like this. That's all it is, So let's just dive in, shall we? It's the auditor, and the accent's one of those things that I find, and this is going to sound totally kind of like actory, but I find that the voice brings you into it. Like even just doing that now with you on the thing, I find my body position changes. I tend to get very hunched in. You probably can't tell, but I'm actually only probably an inch or two shorter than Paul Taylor, but if you look at me as the auditor, I'm several inches shorter than him. Because I tend to pull myself down into a very diminutive kind of size. Because I believe he's kind of a bit subservient.
You're also shuffling around a lot.
I do
in the film.
I shuffle and I twitch. He's like an insect at times. He tends to move like a little Renfield, a bit spidery. And I found that was from looking at the character in the mirror, because you tend to see how the eyes become. I wanted these big black soulless eyes, so that when the camera would push in, that like a shark's eyes, as Quint would say. That those scenes when we just push in on the auditor, you don't know what he's thinking. Is he good? Is he bad? Or is he offended by this? Or is he shocked and surprised? And I found that if you just one little movement of the head could transmit huge amounts of information.
Yeah, again, we're kind of leaping ahead, but I really like the performance from yourself for the auditor, and as well, like it seems, of all the reviews, that seems to be one of the resounding successes of the movie, is that the auditor was an extremely compelling kind of character, and everyone, 9 times out of 10 from everything which I've seen anyway now, everyone is praising yourself as the auditor as something which is a really great expansion to the mythos.
Yeah, even people who hate me, and even people who hate the idea that I would be so arrogant to put myself in the role, seem to even enjoy it. And people have a real problem with it. Some people are like,
really?
And he plays the auditor as well. And it's like,
What's the issue with that? I don't see the problem.
In the words of Dave Skylark from the interview, I would say, they hate us because they ain't us. But It's like, Doug Bradley does this thing called the Pinhead Experience in America, where, you can go to a convention and for like $200 you can have like a minute with Pinhead in a room and, and get your photo taken. And they sell out every time Doug does this. I did the best version ever of this. I'm a Hellraiser fan who got to be in a Hellraiser movie. So you could look at me and go, "Oh, what a dick." But it's like, I'm sorry, but you're a little bit jealous, and I understand that. It's like, get over it. But also, I really did think there was a couple of factors involved in this, Mr. H. And the factors were predominantly, yes, I have an ego as an actor, and I wanted to play the character. I thought I could do the job well, and I knew what he should be like. Secondly, there is a technical components. We only had limited amount of makeup artists. Myself, Mike Regan, and Mike Meismer were on set. So in order to facilitate the days when Pinhead and the other Cenobites would be on set, I would come in 2 hours earlier without payment and get my makeup on, so that when everyone else was on the clock and they came in, I was already done. Then Paul could start having his makeup on, and I could already be directing. So I would direct in the order to makeup, which is very Then I could help put Paul's makeup on and finish it, because I always like to finish his makeup myself, and do other makeups, and be directing. And then when we were done, we didn't need another makeup artist to take my makeup off, because while I was directing, I would peel my own makeup off. And it meant that I could do the prosthetics in advance, do the costume in advance, and all that kind of stuff. And then when it came to shooting it, I could shoot myself in a very efficient way. And the way I would do that is basically, when you direct an actor, usually they'll do a line reading of, say, I'd really like a cup of tea. And you go, that was great. Can you do it a bit more urgent? I'd really like a cup of tea. Okay, now give me one that's kind of angry. I'd really like a cup of tea. And, and that takes time to get through that, You have to go talk to the actor and, why am I asking it angrily? So when it came to me doing the auditor, we would literally roll camera on me, and then I would just deliver all my lines, kind of like in 4 different ways. I'd go, right, my first line is, what's my first line? I'd be like, Mr. Watkins, nice to meet you. Mr. Watkins, nice to meet you. And I'd do like 3 or 4 versions. I'd go, right, I think I've got all the choices I want there. Right, moving on. So it meant I could shoot efficiently, because on a low budget like this, $350,000 in 15 days, I had to be so efficient with my time. So efficient in order to get something that didn't look like, a cheesy homemade film. And I'm sure there are people out there listening who are going, it looks like a cheesy homemade film. It sucks. I hate it. But I actually think it looks pretty good. So, and the quality of it's pretty above par. So that's why. That was one of the reasons. But at the end of the day, I also wanted to play the character, and I felt I could do a decent job. And I really do appreciate people who've been very, very kind, embracing the character. I think it's a lot of fun character. It's overwhelming to have people say, man, he should have his own character. And I'm not going to say too much, but because I never thought about sequels, never thought about spin-offs, blah, blah, blah. You don't. Trust me. When you're making a film for this low budget, and it's a rights issue, and everyone's hunting for you like they are, and like I have been hunted down, hopefully he never does anything again, and they should just let the rights go somewhere else. But very early on, people at the studio were like, if this does well, we might consider a spin-off, of the Auditor. And I was like, what, House of the Auditor? And they're like, yeah, we like that. But I mean, who knows? You have no idea. It's all down to business and sales and numbers and fan reaction, if people did react to it. But like I say, people have been very kind. I've had written notes to me, and I've seen reviews online where even the people with staunch opinions against the film have still gone, but the Auditor is quite a fun character. So I'm very happy about that. It's very nice.
So I guess, is it too early to tell kind of how it's been doing sales-wise? Are you kind of kept up to date on that? Do you know?
I know that it's sold out on Amazon within the first month. I know that, and I had to reorder. But no, I haven't heard too much. They won't tell me about that. Again, I'll probably know when. I know that it was number 3 in the Amazon video charts in the horror section.
Wow.
Right next to Tyler Perry, Boo. So that was great. But it definitely seems to be selling, better than some of the other fare, and it's also up there with some of the other ones. But who knows? Like I say, I'm sure. Hopefully, some bean counter, at one of these companies will hopefully, be looking through a broadsheet one day and go, good Lord, that seems to have sold a lot of DVDs. Someone should call that guy and get him to make something else. And because I guarantee that most of the problems that people do have in the film, with the film, yourself included, I guarantee that if I was given a little bit more money and a little bit more time, I could probably, all the problems that you have, and everyone else has, I have the same problems. I never wanted to bathe Paul Taylor in a bit of white light and then cut to him sitting in a homeless shelter and then kind of screaming. That was never my idea for the banishment of Pinhead back to the earthly realm. My ideal situation would have been almost like the birth of Pinhead. The pins would have been pulled out. He would have been stripped of his garb. He would have been shredded. It would have been a lot more cuts and shots. And then maybe cutting to a nighttime sequence, raining, a police car driving down the street. You see a homeless guy lying in the gutter naked, and the cop gets out of his car, flashlight goes over, rolls the guy over, and he's still got the grid cut into his face, and he's bleeding, and he's just lying there going, "The sweet suffering, help me," and that would have been the end, and it would have been much more interesting and much more grandiose. Whether that makes people any happier about the idea of the ending of Judgment, I'm sure not. But I have to tell you this. I wanted people to be pissed off. I wanted people to be either to be shocked by the idea of it.
Got to get a reaction.
The thing is, what did you want me to do? Did you want me to stab him with a lament configuration, or did you want someone to close the box on him again and say, "Go to hell"?
Yeah.
What did you want? What were my choices? And everything has been done, and I always find them such a kind of wimpy ending for Pinhead. And I couldn't rip him apart and have him eviscerated like he was in No More Souls, because I've been retreading that ground. So my attitude was, if he's the king of the castle, if he's the lord and master of all he surveys, then what hurts rich people? Taking their money away from them. So what hurts Pinhead is taking away his crown. And maybe if he is bored and he is kind of over this whole situation a little bit, and he's kind of it's become a drudgery, then maybe being banished to the earthly realm and then finding his way back would make him a more aggressive, and re-getting his crown when he comes back would make him a more
gives him motivation.
Would bring that some virility to him and make him come back with a vengeance. You know what I mean? Yeah. Fuck, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do some real damage now. So that was the idea, but I knew it would polarize, and my attitude was great. I didn't want you to just go at the end of it. I wanted you to go, fuck me, I'm kind of pissed off about that. or wow, that was a good idea. Or, God, what does that mean? Is there no Pinhead anymore? It's at least, for Christ's sake, at least as you go and make a cup of tea, you're pondering what you just saw, hopefully, not just so what do you want to watch now?
Yeah.
Should we watch Big Brother?
At least it makes you think. So you said for me to be as candid as possible. So obviously, I've got problems with the movie, but actually,
me too.
But that's what I was going to say. I actually want to know your problems with the movie first. What is your main issues with the film that you created? I think that's a really interesting question.
Well, I would like us to have stayed with the original format of the movie and the original story structure.
What was that then?
When it was pitched, I pitched the audit early. And then when I wrote it, they said, no, you can't do the audit early. It's going to confuse everybody. It's going to make no sense at all. And I was like, okay, so I embraced the idea. And when I wrote the movie starts with Crystal Lanning being killed.
Right. Then
we have the credits. Then we meet the cops. The cops go to the apartment. They have the dog scene. And look, if I'm going to claim anything here, people have got to admit the dog scene's a good idea.
I liked it.
You know what I mean?
I actually liked it in execution.
It's a fucking good idea. I'm sorry. It's I make no apologies for that. And all this dog torture stuff that I got accused of. But the idea was, to all of those idiotic bitches you've seen walking around with dogs in purses and treating them feeding them filet mignon, and they make me sick, these people. My attitude was, you love him so much, then I'm going to sew him up in your stomach. And he's not dead. He's been anesthetized. People are like, how does the dog breathe? The dog wouldn't survive. It's it was put to sleep. The girl was killed. Her stomach was evacuated, and the dog was sewn up inside. There was air for it to breathe inside there. And yes, it's very lucky that they arrived at the right time when the dog was coming out, but that's movies for you.
Yeah, there has to be a certain amount of coincidence in films, obviously.
Of course. And the dog was the right size. Trust me, that dog would have fit. It was a teacup. It was a teacup terrier, and it did fit. Originally, they showed me dogs. They were like, "We have a dog for you," and they brought in like a 35-pound Alsatian puppy. I was like, "Are you fucking mental?"
Yeah, no.
You know?
It's not going to work.
So I thought that was a good idea, but it was the idea was always going to be that if that was in the newspaper or online, and when people heard that story, they would go, "Oh, that poor dog," you know, the poor dog. No consideration for the girl. So originally it was supposed to be the death of Crystal Lanning, credits.
Yep.
We introduce the cops and meet the cops. Much longer sequence where the cops are introduced. We find out a lot more backstory about them. There's much more dialogue with them in the cars where you get to know them a little bit better. Get to hear they're brothers and have some brotherly dialogue. But all that was cut. So they get to the apartment. They have the scene with the dog. They go back to they meet Christine Edgerton. They go back to the office. Much more dialogue there. More character introduction. Finding out who they are and what's going on and how long they've been tracking this guy. And then Sean gets the call about his wife. He goes home, has a big fight with his wife. Big fight, big discussion, a big thing about what's going on and how he's kind of losing it. And, you know, he's not been the same since he got back. More character development. And then he goes to the bathroom and kind of puts the dishes in the bath and he turns on the TV. And there's a TV story that's saying about a new preceptor killing and how the city is being terrorized by this killer and how we're seeing all this terrible stuff. And there's been a new killing. And we switch from that TV at his house to the TV that Watkins is watching. And Watkins is watching the TV. And we see on the TV these children's shoes hanging off it and all sorts of like creepy stuff.
Yeah. Which
is a little bit taken from the pedophile killer in Hardware. And then he gets the letter. He gets the letter that gets invited to the house. That's when he goes to the house, and we find out a lot more about Watkins and who he is. And you find out that this basically that Pinhead and the Cenobites, or really not the Cenobites so much, but the Stygian Inquisition, have set up this idea that they're gonna. And the idea was going to be that there are hundreds or thousands of these houses all over the world, and they're spiders' webs that they're designed to catch people. That if you've ever seen someone go missing or someone disappeared on their way home from work or children on the side of milk cartons, they just went to these houses, you know what I mean, and got kind of swallowed in. You know, and that's where we meet Watkins. So Watkins goes down that thing. He gets taken and killed. And then we pick up with the cops going and later that night. And there's a scene in a church where Damien meets with her character because she gets kind of freaked out. And that's when the movie kind of gets back onto its normal track. So it would have had more of a ramping up, because then when Sean goes and gets audited himself, it's kind of like, I think there's a big gap from the first 12 minutes. And originally the audit was a lot longer. There's a lot of stuff in the audit that you don't see. And just to clarify, I know you mentioned this, the pages are flesh. They're not paper.
Okay, yeah, cool. So, I mean, I even said, like, you know, I'd like to...
Well, now let me explain to you.
As sadistic as I am, I'd like
when the surgeon drops the skin on the floor in front of the jury, they take off scissors from around their neck and they cut the skin up into page-sized pieces of flesh that are then washed. And their reward for cutting the pages up is they get a bloodbath. They get bathed in the blood of the victim, and then those pages are washed, cleaned, handed off to the auditor, who then sitting at his desk waiting for the next candidate to come through the door.
I like that. That's really good.
That was all, and the assessor is a sin eater. He's a sin eater, you know, as documented, you know, in the various legends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The jury was supposed to eat the vomit. They weren't supposed to dip their hands in it. There was supposed to be a tube feeding from the middle of the room, and they would have been on their knees in like a little triangle position, with looking up at the tube, with their heads looking up at the tube,
right,
waiting for it to drop food like a baby feeder, like a bird feeder, you know.
Yeah.
But really, and then at the end of that, the butcher, the surgeon climbs back into the back of the butcher, and the butcher goes off, and then he's going to go and see the bone collectors, which are characters that we never saw, and the rest of the Stygian Inquisition. So I think it would have ramped up more in its, you know, had I been able to do that. And obviously, if I had more money, I would have been able to do, you know, just open the scale of it, you know, more cops, more forensic people. Like, I had to come up with storylines of like, oh, there's nobody here because they've left the crime scene for you. And, you know, I did a whole scene where they go investigating, and I did a great, really fun montage. It's not great because, you know, but it was a really fun montage of them going around the streets kind of like interviewing people, and I thought that was really cool. And the scene with the landlady was a much bigger scene. Now, don't get me wrong, and I apologize to people who got the wrong idea here that Heather Langenkamp was the star of the movie. It was always announced whenever we talked about it that she was purely a cameo. But Amazon and IMDb, when they list the movies, their algorithm within their search engine or wherever it is when it lists based on your star meter on IMDb, and it lists on Amazon based on how many credits you've got. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Which is why now if you look on Amazon, it's like, you know, it's Heather's name and then my name, because I get more credits than most of the actors on the film. So it looks like it's starring Heather Langenkamp and Gary J Tunnicliffe. Do you know what I mean? And on IMDb, it's the same, because it's like, you know, it ranks like that. So anybody coming to the movie is going to go, oh my God, Heather Langenkamp starring in this film. It's like, it was always a cameo, and she did it purely because she read the script and said, this is really weird and really freaky, and I'd like to be involved. And you know, I was like, we don't really have any roles, but I've got this landlady if you want to come and play her. And she was like, and we made her look grungy. Like, somebody actually thought in a review that, wow, Heather Langenkamp's really let herself go. And I didn't want to cheesy it by, like, you know, I've said this in other interviews, but I didn't want to give her a Nancy name tag, or you know, the place they're staying at's called the Boiler Room or something. It would have been cheesy and crap, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of come and go, but I do apologise to people for getting the wrong end of the stick on that. But
okay,
I think,
I wouldn't say
I think
that was
I had my way to do it. I would have been able to do some bigger and bolder stuff and some choices and more sets, and to do some bigger eviscerations, you know, and been able to make sure that Chatterer's teeth were chattering in that one scene.
Yeah, I do. I definitely had a problem with that.
You had a problem with it. You had a problem. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm the director, makeup effects guy, and I'm on set going, Mike, why aren't your teeth chattering? Dude, what the fuck's going on? I think the elastics broke on the inside of the jaw. I'm like, dude, I was like, oh, well, fuck it, I've got to shoot it. So if you actually look, his teeth are chattering in one scene.
And then they just kind of stop.
Yeah. Elastic broke, you know, and I was like, I mean, I feel like I'm throwing Mike under the bus here, but the truth is, I was the effects supervisor, so I should take full control. But on the day, it would have taken an hour to fix it, and we just didn't have an hour. So it was like, oh, look, just do it, and I'll fix it in post. I'll shoot an insert or something, but we never did. And we did no inserts on this. There was no reshoots. There was no, you know, as soon as the film was finished, I was back on the line. You know, we had 3 weeks to edit it, and that was it. So
I guess. Just kind of talking about like issues with the film and stuff. Obviously, Chatterer's teeth is kind of one of them. What's your, to everyone that has a problem with the fact that the auditor is even a thing now? Kind of what was your explanation for bringing the kind of auditor in? And it's not my issue, because I actually like the auditor and I like that expansion to the mythos.
The Cenobites, right? Here's the deal. I've always believed, quite simply, the Cenobites are the sharp end of the blade, right? And Pinhead isn't. I can't stand Pinhead being chit-chatty. To me, it becomes like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes like, well, are you going to do something? You're going to stand there and talk about it, mate. You know what I mean? And because of the way he speaks and his agenda, it's like, what's he going to talk about? You know, like pain and suffering and killing and all that. You know, he's not going to talk about, you know, what he had for dinner. You know what I mean? His job is to serve ultimate pleasure and ultimate pain to those people seeking those kind of things from the box.
Yeah.
So it makes him a very linear character to write. The film where he's the most verbose is the film where he's kind of off the leash. You know, he's in a pillar trying to talk his way back into the world. So there he's got an agenda to talk.
Yeah, but he needs to, doesn't he?
Yeah, right. And then when he's unleashed, it's kind of like the idea that he's without the human side, so he can be more malevolent and more mean. But it's very difficult to write too much Pinhead stuff or having too many things without him, like I say, I'm always frightened of the law of diminishing returns. That the more we see him, the more he doesn't do anything. The more it's like, why isn't he ripping people apart with chains? Why isn't he just being the badass that we know him to be? So I'd had this idea for this Inquisition, this Stygian Inquisition, and I just thought it was and I thought it was very Barker-esque, and maybe I'm being extremely presumptive by saying that, and maybe if Clive ever heard this, he'd be like, "How dare you?" But I was trying to do something that was more, that just gave a different. My belief was that Hell's probably factioned off into many different factions, and the Cenobites are doing their little thing, but someone's still got to process souls and get that job done. And there's a certain amount of inter-office, politics. And that's really what was going on. I mean, I always thought it'd be funny to get Ricky Gervais and do a version of The Office that's got all my characters, you know what I mean? With, Pinhead going, "I'm not just a boss, I'm a comedian as well." You've got, the auditor is out in front, it'd be hilarious. But I mean, that's what I was trying to do, was trying to give it this Gilliam-esque kind of like bureaucracy to Hell. But it's also got this very bizarre twist. Like I'd got visions of, like I say, rooms of auditors and filing of skins and this kind of stuff, But I couldn't do that, so I did the small version of it. I did the tapered down version of it. And I just thought it would offer something new. I really went down that mantra, and it's kind of ridiculous, I know, because it's a wedding phrase. Something old, something borrowed, something new, something borrowed, something blue. So I thought that, something new was the Stygian Inquisition, but it would feel Hellraiser-esque. And then something, there's something new is the old is the Cenobites, and then the, borrowing some stuff from cop shows, something blue lighting. So there you go. But that was really the agenda, was to serve up something that, in the same way that when you saw the first film, my greatest memory of that film was those first few minutes of seeing Pinhead, where you didn't know who this character was, what he was doing, why he was doing it. I mean, you see this character just moving through this weird set of chains and spinning pillars, and then rearranging bits of flesh on the floor. And you're like, what is that? And I kind of wanted that with the audit. I wanted people to be sitting in their living rooms looking at each other going, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
What am I seeing here? And then when they saw Pinhead, go, oh, okay. Like, here he is, you know what I mean? And he's not involved in that, really. He's supposed to be, at that point, when we see the Inquisition, he's really just basking in the sound of the screams of hell, of what's going on. He's just kind of like, that's his enjoyment is the lamentation of screams, you know what I mean? Of just hearing sorrow and screaming and pain going on all around him while he's waiting for the next toll of the bell to be called by the lament configuration. So, what was the question again?
To be fair, I've just got lost in kind of what you're saying now. Anyway, but
that's why I chose to do something new. I chose to do something new because it allowed me to. If you're going to write a scene with very expensive Cenobites, because they're expensive to do in terms of costuming, in terms of production time of getting them ready for scenes, masks and costume. If they're going to turn up, they're the enforcers. They're the If I can't do 12 minutes of Cenobite stuff at the beginning of a film like that, because it's very costly, very expensive, and what are they doing? And it was easier for me to have characters that were new, also weren't technically Cenobites, but also didn't require quite so much preparation and shooting time. You could have done the Stygian Inquisition with Cenobites. It could have been Pinhead being the auditor. You could have had Chatterer being the jury or whatever, you know what I mean? But it would be really costly, really expensive, and kind of tricky. And I wouldn't give those guys kind of such mundane tasks. Whereas to me, the assessor, and there's people out there who've complained about the assessor, like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's just a fat guy in a suit. I'm like, well, it's not. He's kind of like the epitome of gluttony, if you like, and John does a great job. And I wanted it to look like some kind of Baroque, weird, like over the top. Baron Harkonnen performance, you know what I mean? When you think of the Baron Harkonnen in Dune, and Kenneth Macmillan's kind of like, I wanted him like that. So I wanted it to be grotesque, but also new, so that you weren't just seeing Cenobites do it. It was these unfamiliar characters, and my attitude was people are going to embrace these characters or reject them. But I mean, with the auditor, it's like, by making him something different than a Cenobite, you could allow him to have a certain amount of eloquence.
So in terms of like, because I mean, I've done breakdowns of Cenobites, and I've covered so much stuff on my channel, and I even tried.
Oh yes.
I tried to do an auditor breakdown, but we can get it from the man himself now. So what is the backstory? Obviously, I don't know whether you wrote one or
salesman from Cleethorpes. He's a fishmonger from Cleethorpes. Wouldn't that be just awful?
Oh God. How would you explain the accent?
He is definitely a bureaucrat. I mean, he's definitely a blue collar. He's Itzhak Stern from Schindler's List. You know, I think the auditor is trying to go about his day, and like that one guy in the office who's basically figured it out. I need to be good to this person. I can be a bit nasty to that person. I need to get my job done. I love my work. But he's trying to steer his way through the icebergs of the political structure of hell. And I think he's definitely formally human.
Okay.
And same as Pinhead. Pinhead is formally human. Is he Elliot Spencer? Probably not.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I assumed he wasn't like Elliot Spencer anyway.
I think everybody in hell, was formerly human. All of the kind of like characters that we're seeing, the jury, the assessor, all those characters were formerly humans, and they were either they've either been plucked from the denizens of hell because they had certain affinities for certain tasks. Again, I think it's like, if the souls have been cast down into hell, then you have certain tasks to do. You go and find the people who have their abilities that are going to work for you. It's like when Schindler goes looking for Itzhak Stern. He's looking for I'm looking for a good man. I heard you're a good man at running a company. So I think that in his former life, maybe he was the ultimate IRS agent or something. Or maybe he was part of Hitler's, I don't know, some kind of dark accountant in the SS. I don't know, it's difficult to know what he might have been.
Yeah.
But definitely he has an affinity for pain. But I never went too deeply into the backstory of who he was, what he was about as a person.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you, his name was so and so, so and so. I never did a great big. I never did a big detailed breakdown of the character. I never did a great big for myself. I just always felt his persona and character would come from the from what I knew about him already.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I'm letting you down a little bit, but I mean,
well, no,
I definitely think
so.
That's what I really.
Yeah,
so that's what I really felt. But yeah, human, absolutely human.
Yeah.
And in some former quality of his life, it bled into his performance in hell, and then he's been. I think he's worked his way up. I think he's got a. But I think there are many auditors.
Yeah.
I think there are many auditors. Like, again, in my dream version, I guess, there will be a shot of the Leviathan maze with a whole bunch of these auditors hustling towards, some larger place, clutching their pages. You know what I mean?
So I mean, the issues that people have with the kind of film, I still haven't really got onto mine, but a lot of people have an issue with the fact that Paul Taylor is Pinhead now, for Judgment. Why? Why not Doug Bradley? Because that's one of the things that keeps coming through in the comments, and that's one of the things that people are just. It's one of the main reasons why no one, or comments anyway, have been. I'm not seeing the film because Doug Bradley's not in it, which is. I don't think that's the way to go anyway. Because newsflash to everyone that thinks that Doug Bradley doesn't know who you are. So why is Doug Bradley not in it?
I get it. Look, I mean, and I admire people who are kind of like. I mean, I don't understand it personally. I mean, I didn't ban myself from seeing Silence of the Lambs because Brian Cox wasn't playing Hannibal Lecter. And Brian Cox was a great Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter, but I didn't go, no Brian Cox, no Hellraiser, no Silence of the Lambs. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah. I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing yourself an actor a disservice. Secondly, to anyone who's critiqued Paul Taylor or goes out of their way to be mean to him, he's just a fucking actor who got given a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So don't be angry at him. Don't you want to go have a go at someone? Don't pick on the monkey. Pick on the organ grinder. I hired. Thirdly, the reason Paul Taylor's playing the part is because Doug Bradley wouldn't sign a non-disclosure agreement to read the script. And secondly, Doug Bradley has said so much shit about Dimension over the years that he got up to the hierarchs there. There are online videos where Doug calls people at Dimension idiots and fools. So when Doug declined to sign the NDA, much to my annoyance, I mean, I wanted Doug in it. I love Doug. He was a dear friend of mine, and he's not anymore, which is a real nasty situation that's come out of this. But as soon as I got the film and as soon as we'd finished the script, I was really excited to call him. We had more money than the insulting amount they were going to give him on Revelations, which is why he didn't do Revelations. We had a decent amount of money, and I called him, and he was like, "Why are you helping those assholes make another film?" Which I was like, "Well, it's my film, Doug," and that didn't seem to change his opinion at all. I mean, I was hoping, I was really expecting, to be quite honest, that he'd be, "Hey Gary, it's you doing it? Oh my God! Oh, then sign me up, buddy." You know what I mean? Like, whatever you need, I'm there. And he wasn't. He was very down on it, very kind of like just down on it. And I pitched the idea of the script, and he was like, "Yeah, well, sounds all right, But I was like, "We only need you for a couple of days." And he was like, "Oh, if it's only a couple of days, then it sounds like another horrible Hellraiser film." I was like, "Well, I can't, Doug likes Hellraiser 3 because, it's got a lot of Doug in it, And I mean, I didn't want to do a Hellraiser film with tons and tons of Pinhead in it. So he wasn't ingratiated by that. So then he was very kind of like, "Oh, well, just send it to me and I'll read it." And he was really negative. And I turned around to the producers and said, well, he wasn't, they were like, "How was that?" I mean, it was literally like, they were like, "Did it go, is he excited? Is he cold?" And I was like, "No, he doesn't sound very excited at all. He sounds quite the opposite of excited, actually." And my bubble is well and truly popped, I was like, I was really excited to get on the phone with Doug, and now I feel really miserable. And I said, and they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, we should send him a script." And I said, I'm really terrified that if he doesn't like it, he's going to turn around and say, before the film comes out, he's going to go, "Oh, well, I read the script and it's shit." You know what I mean? Like, if he says he's not going to do it, he's going to turn around and poo-poo the whole thing, and like he did on Revelations. And one of the producers said, "Oh, well, we'll get him to sign a non-disclosure agreement." And I was like, "Okay." So I said to Doug, "We're going to send you the script and we'll send you an NDA." And it wasn't a special NDA. It was just one that the producer had just done a film and they had an NDA in their script, so in his computer. Yeah. So he changed the name of the film, and it was exactly what everyone on that previous film had signed. And we sent it. And Doug said to me, I'm not, how dare you? I'm not going to sign an NDA, and I'm not going to sign an NDA just to read a fucking script, a damn script, he said. And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And there was kind of like a stalling point. I was like, "Well, what do I do now?" And he just said, "I'm not going to read it." So I guess I turned around at that point. We were getting, it was like we needed to find someone. I was like, well, I turned around to the producers and said, "I guess we're looking for somebody else." And they were like, "Yeah." They said, honestly, "We're not that bothered anyway." He said he hasn't said very nice things about us. It's kind of like, we're going to give him some money, but he's been pretty mean about us. And I said, "Well, I guess we're looking for the best actor we can find, I said, "I want everybody on this film to be really enthusiastic and to be into it and to be wanting to do a good job and to turn up and be laughing and joking and ready to buckle down." And I didn't want Doug to be sitting up the corner saying, "Well, when we did Hellraiser 4, I had twice as much money as this," or whatever, you know what I mean? Or 3 times, or, "This is very low budget, isn't it?" I wanted a positive energy.
Makes a massive difference, doesn't it? You can't have people, down on one another in, when you're all trying to come together in a positive way to make something which is ultimately positive. You can't have a negative aspect of the production.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Doug probably would have done that. I'm sure he would have turned up and been like he always has, which is a thorough professional, and he would have rewritten the dialogue like he always does on Hellraiser films. He tends to rewrite the Pinhead dialogue or change it a little bit to make it more for him. And I'm sure he would have embraced it, and I'm sure he'd have had a lot of fun with it. I don't know how he would have thought about me being the auditor. He might have had a problem with that, I guess, because he tends to get a bit, I don't know, but yeah, I was very, very upset, and I also knew there would be horrendous backlash to it. I knew that, wow, this is not going to help things at all. So I purposely kept the email where he'd written to me and said what he said about not reading the script, and then we didn't tell anybody at the film. We kept it all under quiet. The film was being made under the guise of being called Judgment. And Doug, bless his heart, hadn't said to anyone, "Oh, I hear they're making a Hellraiser." He didn't go out publicly with it. He kept it quiet. And then we were shooting, and I came off set one night, and I was in the car, and the producer said, I was about to turn my phone on, because I don't allow cell phones on set. And I don't use mine at all during the time when we're on set. And I turned just before I turn my phone on, the producer said, just warning you before you turn your phone on. Heather Langenkamp released that she was in Hellraiser today. She kind of told someone that she was in Hellraiser.
Oh, no.
And I was like, ooh. And he's like, yeah. He's like, it's the internet's kind of blown up with it. And I turned my phone on, and my phone was just like messages and oh my God, and all this kind of stuff. And I guess rightly so, as soon as the information had come out, someone had gone to Doug Bradley and said, hey, what's your opinion on this? And Doug had clearly got his ducks in a row and had got his whole statement of what he was going to say. And he wrote this statement saying, I was contacted, I was asked to sign an NDA, and I didn't want to sign it. I wasn't going to sign it. And someone came to me and said, Doug said this, Doug said that. And I said, no, here's what Doug said. I said, do you want to know what Doug said? I said, I will cut and paste for you the phrase lifted from my email. I didn't print the whole thing or give them the whole thing, and it was a big email, pretty verbose. And trust me, but all I did was cut and paste the line, I'm not going to sign an NDA and make myself liable for $1 million, which I don't have, brackets, just to read a damn script. Because I found that very offensive, because I was like, well, it's my damn script, Doug. So I printed that, and then all hell broke loose. I mean, I got text off Doug Bradley, and Doug was like, how dare you release our personal correspondence? You have soured our friendship forever. And I was like, good, God, your panties are in a bunch here, aren't they? And I think it was because it showed him in a bad light to the public. It put him in a bad light. Not a bad light, but I mean, it exposed the truth, and he didn't like it. And we haven't spoken since, and it's been gloves off ever since as well. Like, he said some pretty downright shitty things in the press, and I've tried to maintain and keep it friendly. I even reached out to him about 3 or 4 weeks ago and said, hey, should we clear this up before I go and start doing interviews and stuff? Because I'd love to be able to be doing interviews and saying, everybody, me and Doug are great friends, and, he said, she said, and blood under the bridge, and it's all been pushed away, and Doug's doing his thing, and I'm doing my thing, and God bless the world, and we're all happy, And I wrote to Doug and said, look, me and my father never spoke for 4 years over shit way worse than what you and I have exchanged. Can't we figure this out?
Yeah.
And I never heard anything back, so he either didn't get the email, which I know he did, but he obviously doesn't want to, and I suspect there are people within Doug's camp who are keeping the vitriol fire burning and saying, oh, Gary's doing this and Gary's doing that, and look what Gary said about you, and, well, get over it, right? So, I mean, Paul came in, we hired Paul, I saw lots and lots of actors, and when I saw Paul's tape, he was reading for the assessor because we didn't want people to know it was Pinhead.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I thought physically he kind of looked a little bit like a young Peter Cushing, and I just thought he was good, and he had a good English accent, and I kind of thought straight away, there's our guy, and we had him read for Pinhead, and he came in like a big, a great big excited fan puppy, excited to do the job, and if he ever did anything wrong, he'd be like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me for doing that, I'd be like, it's okay, and he was just excited to be the character, and I think he did a great job, I really do. I mean, Doug Bradley's, Doug owns that character, he's Pinhead, and he always will be, and those are big boots to fill, and Doug fucking nailed it physically, and created a brilliant, beautiful character, and hats off to him for that, and he's made a lifetime out of signing 8x10s over it, you know what I mean? And kudos to him for that. It's all very good. I think I'd like to have seen Doug go into different roles. I mean, and Doug Bradley can sit there and bemoan and be angry, but I actually got Doug roles in other films because I recommended him. Like he was in Prophecy because I recommended him to the producers of the Prophecy, saying, Doug's a great actor. We should get him to do something other than Pinhead, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a tragedy that Doug hasn't played other characters and being able to. We haven't seen more of Doug in other roles, but hey, that's the way it goes. But I would love to have Doug to have been in it. Loved him to have been in it. I am sorry that we're not friends anymore. It upsets me, and I think it bodes miserably for the future because I'm sure our paths are going to cross, and I'm sure it's not going to be pleasant. But I'm ecstatic that Paul Taylor's in the role, and I'm so happy that those of you in the public have chosen to embrace him and to give the guy a chance. And thank you for that, because like I say, at the end of the day, Paul's just an actor who got a role and knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a shame to hear that kind of that obviously, went down. I mean, I don't want to get too into it because I know there's a lot of people on my channel that, I mean,
It's a real shame. It's a real shame because at the end of the day, me and Doug have bled, and in a lot of circumstances, we've done a lot of miles together. We've sat in a lot of hotel bars and drank a lot of beer. We've been to strip clubs. We've been all to, we've been had dinners together. We've been to, we've been to ice hockey matches together. We went to Canada on a tour. We did Panama Beach. Spring Break as Pinhead. We did the Jay Leno show with Mel Gibson and Frank Bruno. You know what I mean? So and all of the films and all the craziness that ensues, and I did everything within my power as a makeup artist to also be a friend and protect him, and take care of him. And I admired him thoroughly as an actor. The first thing I ever did was get a picture of Pinhead with me and Pinhead when I did his makeup in '93. And it's very difficult now because I've got signed things from Doug and books signed to me and things, with love and these hilarious, messages. And it's like, well, do I burn all those? Do I throw them all away now? It's like, what do you do? It's like, do you keep these things? And I have such great memories of being his friend, cohort, and worker, and almost like a butler at times. Kind of like making sure that he had what he needed. And now I feel because of one little thing, which was I basically printed up one line from an email where I wanted people to see the truth, not so they wouldn't go, oh, because the problem you get is from my side is that a lot of people want to be very nice about Doug and say, oh, it's all Doug's all good, it's Gary's the bad person. And on one occasion I wanted to turn around and say, look, read the email,
Yeah. Well, read the truth.
Before you shoot me, read this one line, and that's what he said, and it put yourself in the same position, After 20 years, you finally get a chance to do your film, your Hellraiser movie, and it's like there are people out there who said, oh, why would you direct a Hellraiser film? Why would you even do it? Even Doug was like, why would you do it? Why would I do it?
Why not?
Why would I do it? Let me ask everybody out there in YouTube land who's listening to this. Do we have any wannabe filmmakers or scriptwriters out there? Put your hands up. Yes. Let me ask you a question. If you get a phone call tomorrow from Dimension Films saying, hi, we're Dimension Films, would you like to write and direct the next Hellraiser movie? We've only got $350,000, but would you like to do it, yes or no?
There's screams of yes right now.
How many people are going to go, well, I don't really like what you've done with the franchise in the last few years. I'm not really a big fan. You know what? I'd rather go and do my own thing. Thank you very, very much. That's why I did it. And then excitedly, I called my friend of 20 years, the person I've worked with, someone who I considered to be a friend. And when I didn't, and what I expected to get was a hearty, hey man, what do you need? Where? Tell me where and when, and I'm going to be there with bells on. You know what I mean? And I didn't get that. I got this very dour, kind of like sour response, and it was literally like, hey, do you want to come to my 21st birthday? It's going to be amazing. Really? You having a 21st birthday party? Really? You having a party? Oh, well, I'll see if I can come, but I'm not going to promise anything. And it was like, what? Really? Seriously? After all I've done over these years, and you're going to poo-poo on my birthday party? So there you go. So, you take into it whatever you want, but that's why it's all gone sour, and that's why we're not friends anymore, and that's why we don't talk, and it's a shame, right? It's a shame.
Yeah, I think any lost friendship is a shame, massively.
I don't have that many, so.
It's all right, Gary. I'll be your friend now. It's fine.
Yay!
But I think it's important to acknowledge that, because I know that is one of the persistent comments that is coming through on any video that I've done of Judgment, and it is a persistent comment, and I think it's important to acknowledge the reasons why. That's kind of why I asked, and I don't want to get too into kind of my thoughts on it or anything like that, 'cause it's not really my place either. But
I think anyone who says no Doug Bradley, no Hellraiser, it's like, I don't really understand what you're holding the candle for. It's like, okay, don't rent it and shut your mouth and go on your way. You know what I mean?
Precisely.
I don't understand what your agenda or it's like, what are you trying to say? Like, someone posted a line on Amazon that says, no Doug Bradley, no Hellraiser, learn your lesson, Hollywood. And I'm like, really? You think Hollywood's listening to you, mate?
Yeah, but that's the thing as well.
You know what I mean?
Do you ultimately just stop the franchise then, just because someone doesn't want to be in it? Why
I would love to be in a production, like a meeting at Paramount tomorrow, and someone goes, hey, hold on a second. There's a line on Amazon here. They're right. We should learn our lesson here.
That's it. Stop production.
Clearly, casting someone else other than Harrison Ford in the Solo movie was a bad idea, guys. And also, I've got to say, honestly, to be quite honest, actually, with Doug playing at Pinhead, it was difficult 10 years ago to apply the makeup because Doug's got quite soft skin, and his skin is very heavy around his eyes. We were actually having to apply lifts to his face to lift up the skin, to move the skin because essentially with Pinhead's makeup, you're youthening him. You know, you're not adding, and Doug's quite jowly. And even looking at the makeup they've done on him for this Pinhead experience, I think he looks kind of jowly. So, I mean, it would have been difficult, maybe we could have redubbed it, I don't know. Although, honestly, I think if you're going to have Doug play it, Doug should play it. But technically, it would have been a bit of a challenge, I think. But like I say, at the end of the day, Paul came in and I love it. And if you don't want to give Paul a chance and watch the film, then clearly you've got other issues that you need to deal with and you're not going to see it. And fine, go on your life and do whatever you want to go and do. I don't mind. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. I don't get any more money or any less money if people do or don't watch it. You know what I mean? And personally, if tomorrow they said we're going to make a $20 million horror film, Hellraiser film, and we're going to let Zack Snyder direct it, then I'm still going to go and see it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still going to go. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, Zack Snyder, really? I mean, I'd go, oh, you know what, I'm going to see it. Because at the end of the day, if someone else makes a reboot or a reimagining or another Hellraiser film, no one's going to come in my house and steal my copy of Hellraiser 1 and 2, which are really the only Hellraisers I watch.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not a fan of a lot of the stuff that, I was involved in making. I'm not, A
lot of people love Hell on Earth.